The English language is an incredible thing. If you dissect it and you look at the individual words, sometimes they can really highlight what's going on beyond just the traditional meanings. So let's look at one term. We pay attention. We pay attention. Just the idea that our attention is valuable enough to act as currency really should be a clue. So we all know that life breaks down into atoms. What we see, hear, touch, smell, that can be broken down into particles, and beyond particles it can be broken down into atoms, and then even the atom itself can be broken down into smaller pieces. And what quantum physics tells us about that is that atoms are really just energy. So here we are in this world that we think is hard and material, and they go and blow it for us and tell us that no, there's nothing actually that's solid. Everything around us breaks down into energy. And all that's happened is those quantum particles and those atoms vibrating at exactly the same frequency have gathered together to form a particle of matter, and those particles of matter, all vibrating at the same frequency, have banded together to form something like a piece of wood. And we look at it and we see wood, but in truth we know now that wood is not a solid thing. Okay, so quantum physicists doing experiments on the atom in particle accelerators where they spin the atoms round and round, and they do this in order to discover the components, or to watch the component parts of an atom. I mean, you'd think it would be enough that they've broken it down to the atom, but no, they want to know what's inside the atom. So they spin these atoms around in quantum accelerators, and that's where they discover the quarks and the bosons, these elements of an atom that are tiny, 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 and they're so small, they're so infinitely small that nothing that humanity has discovered or created so far can actually see that small. But you can see them by the trails they leave behind in quantum accelerators. So there are quarks and bosons, and we know that they are component parts of the atom. And there are these quantum physicists doing these experiments where they're spinning this atom round and round in order to see the quark and the boson. I mean, how does that conversation go? Darling, I'm off to work. What are you going to do today? I'm going to go and hunt a quark. Quite by accident, these quantum physicists discovered that unless there is someone present with their attention on this experiment, the quarks don't show up, and neither do the bosons. And so they replicate the experiment many times, and they find out that the common factor that brings these quarks and bosons into reality is the power of human attention. So when there was a human being present putting their attention on the experiment, then the quarks and the bosons showed up, and when there was no human being present, then no quarks, no bosons. What a discovery that is. That is the power of human attention, that our own attention brings things into being, and the lack of our attention causes them to recede out of tangible existence. Think about that for a moment. Our own attention either creates something or causes that something to recede out of creation. Most theologies believe that some creator, some essence, some being brought us into being in, and I use the his pronoun because it's common, but in its own image. Yeah? And so if our creator brought us into being in its own image, then it follows that the human being is capable of creation in our own right. And I don't just mean the artist painting the picture, or the carpenter building a table, I mean our own power, our own innate power to bring things into being. And that is the power of our attention. So, what does this mean? Well, in your daily life, your attention is currency. Your attention to everything that's going right in your life is an investment in everything that's going right in your life, because the power of that attention will then attract further things that will go right. The same is true in the reverse. If you pay this valuable, valuable currency of your attention to everything going wrong, then you are investing in what is wrong, and you will get more things to invest negative attention into. So what is our choice? It's difficult for most people to make the leap. If somebody lives in a world where they just kind of happen, the world just kind of happens, and they have no power in their world, and they're resigned to fate, then they can be sloppy about their attention. They can pay attention to anything, and whatever happens in their understanding is just fate, dishing out a good hand or a bad hand. But if we know, if we're conscious of the power of our attention, if we've paid attention to the discoveries being made by quantum physicists, then we know the value of our attention. And we know that if we invest it in what we want rather than what we don't want, and in what we love rather than what we hate, then we will create more of what we love and more of what we want. This is Alice, sending love wherever it's needed.